Hello friends, a warm welcome to all of you in this discussion with another new module, that is interactive behavior. In this module, I am going to discuss about that how interactions can be studied or observed based on some tools. This entails the use of those tools or applicability of those tools to understand conflicts or disliking among each other, how people compete with each other based on those interactions. People can mend those conflicts and come on a platform where mutual interaction is taking place. Now, in this module, I will also talk about that how interrelationships can be resolved, can be resolved based on understanding one's own emotions and other person's emotions, which is completely based on to what extent two people who are interacting are exchanging information on their own or they are inhibiting in sharing the information. Now, when we are talking about this aspect in social psychology about interactive behavior, this also entails that how previous or past experiences, hidden fears or motives also play a very dominant role in understanding human behavior, because it is not only that how and to what extent we are sharing information, it also deals that whenever an individual has some hidden desires or unfulfilled desires, then how it modulates human behavior and how it can be understood by the other people with whom they are interacting. Before getting into more into details about interactive behavior based on certain tools, I will also discuss about interpersonal conflict. Whenever we are talking about interactive behavior, it is not only about interactions, but that interaction can also be in form of interpersonal conflict. When two people who are interacting or competing with each other on scarce resources, they have disliking for each other, they disagree on certain aspects, then this leads to conflict, and there are certain factors that contribute to interpersonal conflicts. So, let us first define that what is interpersonal conflict. It is confrontation between two people or individuals or groups over scarce resources, controversial means, incompatible goals or combination of these. Now, this incompatibility can also be in form of disagreement or disliking for the other person. So, whenever there is some competition, there is some hassle to attain or achieve some scarce resources, or there are some controversy on some issues within the group, then it leads to interpersonal conflict. Under that conflict comes the major portion, that is confrontation. When two people who are disagreeing, definitely they will express their disagreement, their disliking towards each other, and how people confront. Now, when they are confronting, certain behaviors are emulated from both the sides, from both the parties. If any person involved in confrontation can think of resolving those conflicts, then it can be resolved, else it continues or the process becomes or the group process becomes stagnant. Therefore, it is expressed in form of disagreement between two people who are independent to each other, but they are also connected to the other person in some or the other ways, and they also perceive their goals as incompatible. Now, this incompatibility related to goals can be between close friends, it can be colleagues, it can be any family member, because conflict is ubiquitous, it is pervasive, it is ubiquitous. No one can be away from any conflict. We are individuals, human beings, we have all kind of feelings and emotions that we experience. It is not only about pleasure, it is not only about comfort, it is also about displeasure and discomfort whenever we disagree or dislike the other person. It can be a friend, it can be a colleague, or it can be any family member. It is characterized by disliking one another, expressing hostility. It can be in form of verbal hostility, it can be about physical aggression, it can be about verbal aggression. We shout, sometimes we become physical and raise hand or show any gesture which is full of hostility. It can be about exaggerating the weakness of the other person. Now, this exaggeration can be in form of spreading or maligning people about saying wrong or malicious about some other person, which is in a form of hostility, expression of hostility towards other person. So, this is interpersonal conflict, which is a form of disagreement that takes place between two or more than two people. When we are talking about this term, then how or what are the sources of interpersonal conflict? If it is among groups, if it is between two groups, if it is among members of a particular group, if it is between two friends, it is between colleagues or between family members, then how it evolves? There has to be certain sources that lead to interpersonal conflict. So, here on this slide I am just mentioning some basic sources or reasons of interpersonal conflict. The first is competition. When two groups or members of a particular group are achieving a common goal, then there can be some scarcity of resources and people tend to compete with each other that who will win maximum or avail maximum resources to reach the common goal. Competition is foremost reason that why people experience interpersonal conflict among each other. There can be also difference in values, attitudes and managerial styles or personality differences, for example, introversion and extroversion. Two people who are interaction with each other, one is extrovert and the other is introvert. An extrovert is more open, he can share maximum information with the other person. Maybe the other person who is an introvert will try to withhold certain information to himself by not sharing or inhibiting to share certain information. When such kind of communication or information gap is been created between two people, then due to personality differences it leads to conflict, or it can be difference in the value, attitudes or managerial style. As we have already discussed about different kind of leadership styles, we can easily understand that whenever there is incompatibility between the leadership style and the members' goal, then it leads to conflict between the leader and the subordinates. Similarly, there can be different managerial styles, maybe the manager is very dominating or authoritative and subordinates are not liking that managerial style based on his values, beliefs and attitudes, then also it leads to interpersonal conflict. The other can also be the relationship is in trouble or will cause damage to the relationship. It constitutes to any interpersonal conflict which takes place between family members. It can be disinterest, it can be difference of opinion on any family issue that leads to conflict. The other is positional or status differences. That means in any organization, whenever an authority or members are placed in hierarchy, then there can be difference of opinion or there can be more authoritative working style within that organization that can create a sort of rift or conflict between the higher authority and the members. This is positional or status differences. It can be about conflict related to role that one person is playing in the organization. For instance, any person who is not finding compatibility between himself and the role he is playing, then also it leads to interpersonal conflict. It can be intrapersonal or it can be interpersonal conflict. The other is halo effect. This is a very important source of conflict that takes place in any group, which means that the first trait or characteristics that we come to know about the other person, based on that information we tend to follow or an overall impression about that of that person in the first instance. Now, the first information that we have received can have a negative or positive influence on us. Based on that influence, we tend to create an impression about the other person and then it leads to interpersonal conflict. For instance, as a judge, if I come to know something, some characteristics about that person or behavioral trait about that particular person in the first instance, that influence, if it is positive, then my judgment about that person, understanding about that person will definitely go in positive direction and the interaction will also take a positive turn. If by chance that influence is negative, then the interaction will also follow in the negative direction. This is halo effect, drawing a general impression about an individual on the basis of a single characteristics, and that too in the first instance. So, we tend to weave that impression on with other information as well. That is a kind of influence that we have based on the first single characteristics. The other is stereotyping. This is another kind of reason that leads to interpersonal conflict when we try to judge someone based on the perception of the group that he or she belongs. If the person belongs to a high status group, then our understanding or judgment of that person will be very high. We will have high opinion about that person. And if the person is coming from a less successful group, or which has a very poor success history, we will in fact not try, we will be influenced based on the status of that group and we will judge accordingly. So, halo effect, stereotyping are very much responsible to be a source of interpersonal conflict. And the last is exploitative tendencies. This is something based on an individual's experience. Maybe any person who tries to take maximum advantage of an individual, then how the person understands those situations and he or she resists that he will not allow the other person to take more advantage in future, that leads to interpersonal conflict again. So, these are the certain sources which leads to conflict in terms of competition, halo effect, stereotyping, personality differences or positional or status differences, but ultimately whenever these conflicts are being understood or occurs in any group, how those conflicts can be resolved. It is not that anybody would intervene and it will resolve. There can be some kind of mediation, but at the same time when it comes to behavioral understanding, then social psychologists have identified some tools to understand behavior about not other but ourselves as well. So, whenever we are talking about behavior in terms of interpersonal conflict, it is not only about the other person, it is about oneself and other. Understanding oneself and other will definitely resolve the conflict in any interaction. Based on this, social psychologists have identified two kind of tools which are very much prevalent and are very much applicable in today's scenario, especially in corporate sectors where employees are being assessed based on those tools, and later on based on the feedback they are being ascertained that how they can improve in what manner. So, let us talk about some tools which are very much popular in corporate sectors. The first is Johari window. This was developed in the year 1955 and this is a technique designed to help people better understand the relationship with themselves and others. As I mentioned that whenever we are talking about interpersonal conflict or resolving any conflict, it is not about others. We also think about ourselves, that what initiative can be taken from my side to understand the other person or vice versa. So, Johari window was developed by psychologists Joseph Luft and Harrington Ingham and is one of the most popular descriptives for analyzing interpersonal conflict. Now, to mention here Johari window, this technique has been named after the names of the two psychologists Joseph Luft and Harrington Ingham. Joseph Joe and Harrington Harry. Joseph Harrington used their initials to name this technique as Johari window, which is used to understand and evaluate interpersonal relationships and conflicts among members. Now, in this window, before going into detail, I will just brief that what this tool is all about. It is basically considered as an information processing tool, which is completely based on expressing or sharing maximum information with the other person and at the same time soliciting feedback from the other person and identify the loopholes in one's own behavior and others, and based on that the relationship can be enhanced. So, it is basically an information processing tool based on disclosure feedback mechanism. Disclosure, sharing maximum information with the group members, and feedback, taking maximum feedback from the other members of the group, so that the loopholes can be highlighted and an individual can improve on those aspects. So, when we are talking about Johari window, the most important thing is that it has 4 quadrants, it has 4 regions, 1, 2, 3, 4. The 4 regions are, the first is open area, the second is blind area, the third is hidden area, and the fourth is unknown area. Now, all these 4 areas are completely defined or based on interactions that takes place between people within the group. What kind of information is being shared by which member, and in what circumstances or under what circumstances the person has withheld certain information, or the person is not knowing something about himself or is completely unknown about himself and others, then under such circumstances communication or information gaps are being created and it can create a kind of conflict among members. But once disclosure feedback mechanism is being adopted based on interactions and sharing information, all the members can come all together to understand each other and resolve those misunderstandings or conflict. So, if I talk about the first window, that is the open area, this is the most conducive area in any interactive behavior. This open area is also known as open self or an area of self awareness, or it constitutes an open receptive person. This is open area and most conducive in the form that the person knows about himself very well, and at the same time the person also understands the other person and the other person also understands the same person. So, there is reciprocation in understanding each other. So, in this window it has been suggested that to interpret the conflict, it may develop between self and others. That means, self is me and others is you. So, conflict between me and you. So, in simple terms, the self can be thought of as me and others as you, and certain information that a person knows about himself and certain information that are not known can be collected all together to resolve any interpersonal conflict. So, this is the base of Johari window, where two people, that is me and you, are involved in any interaction, and how the conflict can be resolved based on sharing information or giving feedback to each other. Now, coming back to this window, it has 4 quadrants, and based on this, the second quadrant is blind area. It is also known as the blind spot and an area of social awareness, or the bull in China shop person. The third is hidden area, or it is also known as the facade. It is an area of self management and the pumper person. The fourth area is the unknown area, which is an area of unknown self. It deals with relationship management, and the person is known as the hermit person. Now, these are the simple straightforward characteristics that whenever any individual is falling in any of the 4 category, then what is the basic behavior of that person. If I talk about open area, then in this area the person is open to himself and to others, and others know him very well. Based on sharing maximum information with the others, disclosing maximum information with the others, the person is known to everybody. There is no loophole, there is no communication information gap to understand that person, and there will be no conflict when any two people are working or interacting in this window. The other window is the blind area or the blind spot. This is the area which is also known as the bull in China shop person. For instance, the person is walking in the shop in the aisle, and by mistake unknowingly the person just gets strikes to any showpiece and drops that statue, and it is broken, and the person is not knowing that what he has done. So, this kind of characteristics of this window is the bull in China shop person, where the person is not aware about the society, about the environment, but the other person knows very well. So, if I continue with the example that the person who is walking in the aisle of the mall, he just strikes with the statue, falls down and breaks into pieces, then the person is not knowing, but the shopkeeper knows that the customer is very much ignorant or careless. In this situation, the customer is not knowing about himself, but the owner knows that the person is ignorant or careless. This is a blind spot where the person is not knowing what he or she is, but the other person knows it very well. This is another reason of conflict between two people. The other is facade, the hidden area, which is an area of self management and the pamper person. In this area, the person knows about himself, but the other people do not know him at all. He has deliberately withheld certain information about himself which he do not want to share it with the other person. It can be his hidden desires, fears, secrets which he does not want to share with the other members of the group, and he manages the information while not sharing with the other person. Under such circumstances, the person can be pumped up so that the person should come up with maximum information about him. This is the pumper person. This is the characteristics of the pumper person. Whereas in blind area, maybe the person can the other members can also withhold certain information from the other person and he is kept in dark. Under such circumstances, again the person is not aware of himself or certain information. This is blind area. And the fourth window is unknown area or the area of unknown self. The person, when a member is very new to the group, the person has no idea about his own aptitudes, creativity, and he is also not knowing his hidden desires and feelings, and the other person is also not knowing about that person. So, both the parties, me and you, they are unknown to each other, and based on furthering interactions and observations, discoveries and disclosure feedback, the people tend to understand each other and gradually they become open. Now, in all the four quadrants or region, feelings, desires, emotions and information are playing so much important role that when these are not regulated at individual level and not shared with the other person, it can lead to any conflict. So, according to Johari window, these four windows completely deal with self and others based on feedback disclosure mechanism. Feedback, when people tend to give you feedback about where you are wrong or what you are doing, and at the same time disclosure when the person is sharing maximum information with the other person. So, the more the disclosure is there, the more feedback is there, which resolves ultimately interpersonal conflict. So, according to first quadrant, that is the open area, it is known to the person about himself and herself and is known to others. It is also known as the area of free activity. Quadrant 2, that is the blind area or blind spot, it is known about a person by others in the group, but is unknown to the person or himself. Either the person is ignorant, he is careless or completely unknown about himself in a particular environment, or members of the other group are also withholding certain information from him and keep him in blind spot. The other is facade or the hidden area, what a person knows about himself or herself that others do not know. It is an opposite of blind area. And fourth, unknown area or unknown self, what is unknown to the person about himself and is also unknown to others. This quadrant will be created when the group members are new to each others. The idea of this window is that window number 2, 3 and 4 need to be reduced to the maximum and window 1 should be expanded to the maximum. This is how this window will work. So, if I go more into detail about these windows, so again coming back, that open area is the most conducive area where sensitive communications take place between two people, and the communication is also very constructive and productive, because members are relating to each other anyhow, because they are sharing maximum information with each other, and this can be increased to the maximum. That means, if we increase this window towards blind area and we increase this window downward towards hidden area, then this can be increased based on disclosure feedback mechanism. So, the most important feature about this window is that open area is free from conflicts and it leads to constructive and sensitive communication, because there is openness, there is trust among members. The other is the blind area. This area can be this area is the area when members are not knowing, when my member is not aware about himself, but the other members are aware about his behavior. This area is not effective or productive area because there are certain issues which maybe the members withhold certain information from that member, or the member is not aware of the environment. This leads to some unproductive aspects, evolve some unproductive aspects within the group activities itself. But this area can be reduced to the minimum if the person is ready to accept the feedback which he or she receives from the other members of the group. So, based on observations and feedback mechanism, this area can be reduced to the minimum. So, therefore, we can say that through feedback mechanisms, sensitive communication can be fostered, and this can only happen when even the member who is having a blind spot is interested in active listening, and this can and helps him to face the reality that where he or she is lacking and how he or she can improve. This is the major characteristics of blind spot. The other is the facade or the hidden area. This area represents information, feelings and intentions that a person is not interested to disclose to the other members of the group. This represents sensitivities, fears on hidden agendas and intentions that a person knows but do not want to reveal. Now, this is an individual's discretion. We cannot force a person, we can just pump a person to come up with maximum information, but ultimately it is an individual's discretion to reveal how much information to the other person. So, this area can be reduced through self-disclosure based on an individual's decision that how much information has to be shared with the other person. That is why a particular term has been used, that is self-disclosure, and based on this the person can disclose his hidden desires and intentions to make the other people understand, right. And the other is the area of unknown self. This area represents information, feelings, latent or the hidden abilities and the aptitudes even which the person is not aware of himself, that what talent he or she has, what aptitude he or she has, and how he can reflect these hidden intentions to the other members. Based on fostered interactions through self discovery or observations, people come to know about the hidden talents about an individual, and through feedback mechanism the individual comes to know and understand what he or she has or the skill he has, and how he or she can use those skills to improve his performance or relationships as well. But the most important thing is that whenever a person who is falling in this window, this area also deals with some psychological aspects of an individual in terms of unconscious desires and motives based on his past experiences, which sometimes become so dominant that the person fails to realize that what he is reflecting in his behavior. So, based on certain counseling sessions, feedback mechanism or exposure process, this area can be reduced to minimum. So, these are the typical characteristics of these windows which can help an individual or two people especially, that where two people are fitting themselves in these 4 windows and to what extent they can fit into the most conducive window, that is the open area. So, based on these interactions, initially when group members meet each other, they are not aware of each other. So, most of the members fall in window number 4 because we are not aware of each other. With the gradual process of interaction, exposure and feedback mechanisms, we tend to reduce the other regions, that is 2, 3 and 4, that is blind, hidden and unknown area, and gradually with the process of improved interactions, every member can move into the open area, which can be reduced to the maximum. This is how, based on understanding people's intentions, hidden desires, Johari window helps in resolving interpersonal conflict. This is another graphical representation of Johari window, that the more the feedback the person is receiving, the more the open area is reducing horizontally, and the more disclosure is information is there, more the person is sharing the information, then the more vertically downward the window is expanding and the other windows are becoming smaller. So, this is how, based on the scores, we can identify that every person can fit or reduce these windows based on feedback disclosure mechanism. This is how the Johari window works to resolve interpersonal conflict. This is an example that Aisha got a job in an organization and the co-workers knew little about her. So, she is in unknown area right now, right. In this context, the unknown and the hidden areas will be larger and open area will be the smallest one, because Aisha is new and nobody knows anything about her. As the others do not know much about her, the blind spot also will be smaller and the model will be as shown in figure 1. So, ultimately when two people are not knowing each other, the unknown area is very much wide. Now, when Linda or Aisha, I have just changed the names, spent most of her free time sketching in the office, which was her preferred pastime, and her co-workers found her very shy and elusive. With that evaluation, she got the idea that she was tried to be more talkative and interacted more with other co-workers. This helped her to increase her open area and thus making the hidden and unknown area smaller. So, based on furthering the interactions, promoting interactions, immediately the open area was expanded and the unknown area was the smallest one. So, this is how, based on interactions and knowing each other, the windows areas can be reduced to smallest while expanding the open area to the maximum, right. Though the feedback Linda got from her co-workers, she could perform well in the office and her real capacity could be obtained as a result of an effective interaction among the colleagues. So, based on interactions only and feedback, co-workers could understand all the hidden talents in Linda and Aisha and how they have made, through interactions, made it possible to expand open area. So, this is the application of Johari window even at workplaces or in corporate sectors. Besides this, these are certain adjectives that are being used when we are interacting with people based on feedback. These are all the adjectives that we can assign to any person with whom we are interacting, and on the basis of these adjectives we come to know that which person is fitting into which window. These adjectives can be able, bold, caring or complex, idealistic, intelligent, knowledgeable, loving, modest, patient, quiet or relaxed, religious, responsive, sensible, sentimental or smart, spontaneous, sympathetic, trustworthy or witty. Based on these adjectives, it becomes convenient and easy for members to understand oneself and others. That is about me and you. This attaching adjectives to every member during interaction will definitely help people to resolve any interpersonal conflict. Thus, we can say that Johari window is a disclosure feedback solicitation model of self-awareness and an information processing tool. The more we get information, collect information of the other person, the more it is easy for us to understand his intentions and desires. It is a model of self-awareness, personal development, group development and understanding relationships. It represents informations like feelings, experiences, views, intentions, skills, attitudes and motivation concerning oneself and the group. Sometimes the interaction can be so conflicting that maybe the person is aligning with the group members, but he has some hidden agenda. When it is expressed, sooner or later the more conflict will be there. So, it represents the information in terms of hidden desires as well. And the most important, that Johari window embraces two important aspects of human behavior. It is understanding oneself, that is self awareness and self management. In terms of how much we are aware or how much we have become aware based on the feedback, and self management, how much information we are sharing and decided not to share, that is self management, and how it is affecting interpersonal relationships, and the other is understanding others, that is social awareness and relationship management. The more we get the feedback, the more we become socially aware, the more we tend to know about ourselves, the more we tend to understand the other person, the more the relationships can be enhanced. So, this is the applicability of Johari window in corporate sectors, in families, interpersonal relationships to enhance human interaction. So, we are through with this discussion. Thank you so much.